What's up, everybody? The Iceman here on this Thursday, a very cold Thursday here in Connecticut. Last night came, last night went. The debut of TNA Impact Wrestling on Destination America. And I must say, I think TNA outdid themselves last night. They put on a great show from the very, very start to the very, very end. There was a lot of swerves, there were a lot of surprises, and it makes you wonder what's going to happen next Friday on their next episode because the way everything ended last night was like, you got to be kidding me, you know? But anyway, the show started off. All the stars were outside in the street, and everybody was just beating up on each other, and it was just like, wow, this is the way they're going to start the show. I mean, it was like totally, totally crazy. And but anyhow, as they got into the ring, Kurt Angle showed up. Obviously the director of operations, and he had a confrontation with MVP. And Kurt Angle said he has stepped down from director of operations, and he's now ready to wrestle. He's instated as a wrestler, and the first match was going to be between MVP and Kurt Angle. But before we get into that, I want to point out while Engel was in the ring as director of operations, he said all belts tonight are on the line, and boy, were they. And MVP and Kurt Angle had a really good match. Um, I wasn't sure how the finish was going to end, but really, with Kurt Angle getting back into the ring um, for the first time in a very long time, as far as being a wrestler, you sort of had to figure that he'd find a way to win, and he did. He ended up defeating MVP in a very, very, very exciting match. We also saw TNA's tag team titles on the line with the Revolution go up against the Wolves, and it was sort of weird because this was a pretty good match to start with, but of course the Revolution had all their other members outside the ring, and then the Hardys appeared, and it was almost like they were there to help out Eddie Edwards and Davey Richards, and it was an inadvertent interference type thing where Jeff Hardy was pushed into one of the members of the Wolves, and then the Revolution took over and ended up getting the pin on the Wolves. So I think next week we'll see the Wolves and the Hardy Boys in a match. Now, whether it's going to be like a grudge type match from the Wolves or not remains to be seen. But it was a pretty good tag team title match. In any event, the Revolution did retain. Then we saw the X Division title match. The challenger, Austin Aries, one of my favorite wrestlers in TNA since AJ Styles has left. Those two were obviously, uh, in my eyes, two of the best wrestlers that TNA has had in a very long time. And he's going up against the challenger, Low Key. And this was a very, very, it's one of those matches that was like technical, high flying, excitement, and whatnot. And when it all came down in the wash, Austin Aries became the new TNA X Division champion. Yes, I loved it. I loved it. This show thus far was great. I mean, I thought it was just totally, totally excellent. Um, there was a segment where Jeremy Borash was in the ring, and Ethan Carter III's music hit, and he came out with Tyrus, the former WWE star, Brodus Clay, if you want to call him a star. And EC3 was just running his mouth and whatnot. And much to my surprise, Jeremy Borash just knocked him. He just belted him. And then everything broke loose from there. We saw Ethan Carter with the electric shears, and he cut off a good portion of Jeremy Borash's hair, which is just showing us that EC3 is still the arrogant one in TNA. He boasts that he is the best, that he's undefeated. I personally would like to see Ethan Carter III become a face and go all the way to the top. I think he has the talent and whatnot. And maybe he's just staying heel right now just to build up, more momentum going into the future. But I would love to see that happen. But this was a very, very interesting segment because Jeremy Borash was doing the ring announcing prior to this incident, and then after that happened, we saw Christy Hemme come in and take over, and what a difference there is because Jeremy Borash is great doing the ring announcing. Not Nothing against Christy, she's a looker, but Borash is so much more better than anything. And moving on, before I do move on, I want to say that Josh Matthews as the lead commentator in TNA was a great move. He's young, he's fresh. It changes up the announce team to the point where it just nothing against Mike Tenay because Mike Tenay is truly the professor of announcing in the world of professional wrestling. But Josh Matthews, like I said, he keeps you energized. He keeps you motivated, much like Mike Tenay did in the early days. And I think Tenay lost a lot of that excitement in him. But Josh Matthews brought a lot to the table, and of course he's teamed up with Taz before at the other promotion. But Matthews is going to be a great addition to the announce table for TNA. So anyway, moving on, we had the TNA Knockouts title battle royal. Uh, Taryn Terrell, the women's knockout champion, was in there with Gail Kim, Havoc, Madison Rae, Angelina Love, Velvet Sky, and Rebel. And it wasn't a very long match. It could have been a little longer, I thought, because it was a battle royal. But it got down to the point where it was Taryn, Gail, and Havoc at the very very end, and it almost looked like Taryn Terrell was going to get thrown over the ropes, but um, with a little chicanery and whatnot, she ended up getting Havoc and Kim go over pretty much at the same time, and Taryn Terrell retained the TNA Knockouts title. Uh, so that was great, but one of the biggest things of the night was when the lights went out. Nobody knew what was going on because Havoc was going after Taryn Terrell, after the match was already won by Terrell and the lights went out. And I'm going, what's going on here? And I had no clue. When the lights came on, there was Awesome Kong. What a shock. It was great to see Awesome Kong. She hasn't been there since 2010. Um, it was just like, oh my God, it was like, you got to be kidding me. Awesome Kong's here. So that was a really really great surprise. So I really enjoyed that. So moving on, the TNA World Title, Bobby Lashley going after the belt that Bobby Roode was holding, and you knew this was going to be a good match. There was a lot of dissension between MVP and Kenny King and Bobby Lashley, so you had to wonder what was going on. And we did see MVP come out with Kenny King and two guys that were dressed up in, happy face masks or whatnot, whatever you want to call it. And this match was going on quite well. And it was getting to the point where you really didn't know who was going to, if Roode was going to retain or if Lashley was going to regain the title back. And it really didn't get to the point where, there was close pinfalls, but you still wasn't certain what was going to happen. But when you saw MVP and Kenny King out there, you're saying to yourself, well, MVP is going to turn on Lashley, so Roode's going to end up retaining. And like I said, all hell broke loose. The happy face guys pulled their masks off. It was none other than Low Key and Samoa Joe. They were with Kenny King and MVP, and I'm going, you got to be kidding me. And then the next thing you know, here comes Eric Young coming out. You figure he's coming out to save the day. He took a chair. He hit Bobby Roode. Bobby Lashley gets the pin and becomes and regains the TNA World Heavyweight title. What a great ending. It was a shocker. Nobody expected any of this. What makes me wonder now is MVP, Samoa Joe, Low Key, Eric Young, Kenny King, are they with Lashley, or is Lashley with them, or will Lashley just look the other way and just want to be away from these guys, one has to wonder. It could be a new stable in TNA, which we all know TNA loves doing stables, but this one could be a very big one because this one could, wreak havoc on anybody or everybody. And it just sort of like makes you wonder why Eric Young turned, but um, and Samoa Joe as well. Well, we've seen Samoa Joe go heel and face on a number of occasions, but in my opinion, I think Lashley is going to sort of, you know, distance himself from this group, even though he did get the victory, because I think MVP wants a shot at this title. So I think Bobby Lashley may end up eventually turning face. And the thing is for Rude, Rude has always been better as a heel. Now, whether or not he turns remains to be seen. Maybe not uh, real quick in time, but maybe eventually down the road. But if you didn't see TNA Impact Wrestling last night, watch it. It was a very, very good show. All the reports that I've seen about the show, everybody said it was a fresh new start. They put on a great show from beginning to end, and that's how I saw it as well. And I cannot wait for next Friday to watch show number 2 on Destination America and TNA Impact Wrestling. So those are my thoughts. Those are my opinions. Um, Most of the readings I've read out there, I agree with. They agree with me. And if you don't watch TNA, don't trash it because you need to see uh, what they did last night because they did make efforts. And I praise Dixie Carter for what she did for her very first show on Destination America. So, anyway, this is the Iceman. Keep warm. We'll see you next time. Peace out, everybody.